Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We have a great privilege today to introduce our very first male guest on the show, Thom King. So welcome to my podcast, Tom. So thrilled to have you here.
Thanks, Lynn. I love how you just threw it on me. You're the first and only male that I've ever had on, and now it's like, oh well, I better keep the swear words out and not be so rough and tumble.
So tell us a little about yourself. What do
Mhm.
you do and why are you passionate about what you do?
Um, well, I do a lot of things. I mean, my main job is I'm the CEO and head food scientist at a company called Icon Foods, and so our mission is actually helping food manufacturers reduce the amount of added sugars that they've got in their products.
Great.
That's my day job. And then my side hustle that I've got is called Guy Gone Keto. So I sort of discovered, well, I shouldn't say discovered, I knew about it, but I finally committed and leaned into a ketogenic lifestyle about 5 or 6 years ago. I wrote a book about it and have been releasing a lot of different products that I create in the lab. And that pretty much sums up, what I do, vocationally. But I have a girlfriend and a dog, and I'm a regular guy.
Okay, so tell our listeners where you live.
I live in sunny, beautiful Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, okay, we were just joking about the rain there, so I'm not quite sure about all that sun.
No, it doesn't. You would probably never need to use sunscreen here.
Being in Florida, I don't think I would know how to live that way anymore.
You would be miserable.
Yeah. So one thing that caught my eye, and it's kind of a little bit off topic as to what I want to head towards, but you mentioned sugar, so that's one of my passions because I'm a sugarholic.
Oh,
So you say that the FDA's position on added sugar is something that you deal with, and I talk a lot about nutrition labels.
sure.
So tell me a little bit about what the FDA's position is on it.
Okay, so I think about 5 years ago, the FDA decided to change the guidelines on how added sugars were reported on the nutritional facts panel. And so the nutritional facts panel, like if you look at let's see if I have anything around here. No, I don't. But if you look at if you look at a product that you buy and it'll have like a block, that says nutritional facts. And on that, it'll have how much fat, how much salt, how much sodium, how much fat, how many saturated fats, and so on and so forth, and also carbohydrates and fibers. And about 5 years ago, the FDA sort of introduced this whole concept behind, hey, we're changing the guidelines, so now you have to report added sugars. So let's say you've got a fruit prep, like let's say you've got some strawberry jam. And so in that strawberry jam, you're going to have naturally occurring sugars, right? Those will show up on your sugars panel. But when you go to add sugar to this jam, to make it sweeter, that shows up under added sugars. And so I mean, we've got an epidemic, or I would say another pandemic, if you will, in the United States that I like to call diabesity. So it's basically obesity and diabetes, and those things commonly occur together. So I think that this is part of the FDA's way of creating a pathway for consumers um, to be able to read the labels and understand, what they're eating. So if you look at something, it's like, hey, this is 22 grams of added sugar, and you are obese or you're carrying extra weight and you're starting to suffer some of the effects of prediabetes, you can make that choice. You can look at it and decide not to buy it, or to look at another product that has less added sugars. So that's how the FDA has helped, but a lot of that got derailed. So, there was a fairly substantial pushback from large food manufacturers on
Sure.
adopting it. And so the current administration kicked it down the road and said, hey, yeah, you guys don't need to do this. We're going to go ahead and move it to, 2020. And now it's been moved again to 2024. So they're not enforcing it, but honestly, I've seen a lot of really good food manufacturers adopt it anyway, because they see it coming down the road. And, and it also gives companies that have products that are low in sugar that ability to show the consumer like, hey, we're low in sugar. So that was sort of a circuitous way of getting to the point, but that's added sugars.
Yeah, but there are so many different names for the added sugars. Some of them I know we can't even pronounce, and some people don't recognize them on the nutrition labels for actually being added sugars.
Right, and you can kind of figure that if it ends in an OSE, like glucose, fructose, sucrose, if it ends in an OSE, it is likely an added sugar. And different types of sugars act differently in the body. Like, I mean, when you look at sucrose, and sucrose is just sugar, plain table sugar is actually two molecules bound together, fructose and glucose, and they're both completely metabolized differently. Like, so if you eat just table sugar, what's going to happen is your stomach is going to break apart that sugar molecule. The glucose is going to go right to your bloodstream to supply energy to your brain and other parts of your body. If you can't burn up all of it, it gets stored in your muscles as glycogens that you could use later when you're chased by a saber-toothed tiger or something like that. And then the other type of sugar is fructose. And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, fructose is good. It's found in fruit. And that's true. Fructose is found in fruit. But if you look at a bear, right, like when a bear goes into hibernation, their main source of food before they're going into hibernation is rotten fruit. They'll eat rotten apples. They'll eat anything that's rotten. They'll get in your trash can. They'll eat the fruit. So they're looking to take in the fructose because that is when fruit produces the highest amount of fructose. But here's the interesting thing, right? Your body doesn't burn fructose. So if you're eating fructose, your miracle organ, the liver, actually converts fructose immediately into lipids, meaning lipids are fats. So when you have fructose, your liver converts it to fat and it gets stored on your body. So that is when, when people, when you read in the news and stuff and it's like, oh, high fructose corn syrup causes obesity. 100%. 100%. Like your body can only metabolize so much fructose. The rest of it gets converted by your liver to lipids. It goes into around your belly, around your butt, legs, stuff like that. It can also cause what's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, where it starts gathering around your organs. So if you're looking to avoid sugar, I would say that fructose is the one sugar that you should try to avoid.
So that kind of leads me, from my perspective, when you say diabesity and your work with the keto portion of a diet.
Right.
Did you start doing that because of the diabetic pandemic, so to speak, that we have here in the States?
Well, I personally didn't dive into the ketogenic lifestyle, because of a pandemic or anything. It was a personal choice for me, and I had always I grew up in the country, in Colorado, and our diet, my diet wasn't great. But when you said that you were a self-confessed a sugar addict, I can one up you on that. Like I was such a sugar addict when I was a kid. Well, I shouldn't even say a kid. Yeah, I was a kid, but when I was in college, those are kids to me now. So that's what aging does to you. People become your children. It was so bad that I would take a can of Pepsi and empty some of it out and pour a bag of M&Ms in it because Pepsi just was not quite sweet enough for me. And I would do that 2 or 3 times a day. And so what I was finding is that by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I couldn't keep my eyes open. And, then I started to experience this thing like yo-yo weight, where my weight would start going up and it would go down when I would eat less or diet and stuff like this. And so finally, I lived like that for so long that I hit this point when I was in Las Vegas, and I got taken out to dinner, by one of our vendors, one of our suppliers. So I was in Las Vegas, and one of my suppliers took me out to dinner, which meant free food. And yeah, I did it right. I had wine, I had cake, I had potato, I had a big huge steak, I had all. And I waddled up to my room, and it was in Las Vegas, so the waft of broken dreams and regret fills the air and stuff. And I happened to just like look in the mirror, and I was like, who the hell is this? I was carrying 35 pounds of extra weight, which it wasn't a lot on me because I'm 6'2", but it was enough, and it was gathered all around my midsection. My blood pressure was 199/90, and I was just kind of becoming a physical wreck. And at that point, it seemed, if at that point, what happened is the pleasure of eating all of that food, right? Like eating cake and sugar and stuff like that, the pleasure of that had been exceeded by the pain of what I was looking at in the mirror, and the pain of like, oh crap, what's my future going to look like? Am I going to put on 35 more pounds? Is this the decline that I'm going to face? And at that point, I'm a big journaler. So, I mean, that's the first thing I do in the morning is journal. And I just got a pen and paper. I start writing it down. How am I going to make a lifestyle change? And, what does this lifestyle change look like to me? And after about a year, I actually had a book. And I brought it to a publisher, and I'm like, hey, this is a bunch of meaningless notes, but this is my ketogenic journey, and I lost 35 pounds. I got my weight or my blood pressure down to 120/80. And I mean, I had amazing energy, and I felt so much better. And they took my notes, and we worked with an editor and released the book, and it was #1 on Amazon for like a second. But I have a screenshot. It was just that second. I'm like, I'm #1. And then yeah, took a screenshot of it, and it's like, okay, there's my Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame. So yeah, so that was, that's how I adopted keto.
Great. So we chatted before we started this podcast, so you got me really interested in this. So how, as a vegetarian or a vegan, can you combine keto?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot. So, and I also, will be stopped by people who are like, hey, you're that keto guy. And I've had vegans, throw a little hate my direction, and they're like, you just eat meat and cheese. You're just eating meat and cheese and destroying the environment. And the fact is, I do eat some meat and cheese, but it's not my primary sustenance. So a lot of people misunderstand the keto diet that way. So the keto diet is really a diet where you're starving your body for carbohydrates, and you force it to start burning fats. So as long as you can eat 70% fat, 20% protein, and 10% carbs, and most of these carbs should be coming from, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, lettuce, all of that. So as long as you're able to do that, you can have any diet you want. And so a lot of the questions I get are, well, how do you get enough fat if you're vegan or vegetarian? Well, that's super easy. Avocados, nuts. There's tons of of plant-based compounds out there that are high in fat. But if you love avocados, have an avocado. Have an avocado, make an avocado smoothie, and then you can also use, you can just use fat, like there's this type of fat that's called MCT, and it stands for multi-chain triglyceride, and it's derived from coconut oil. So use coconut oil in your coffee, use coconut oil, on your salads. You could use olive oil. So if you have a salad, you just drench it in olive oil. And as long as you're able to keep those nutritional macros in that range, right, of 70% fat, 20% protein, and 10% carbs, as long as you're able to keep in that area, you will, regardless if you're vegan, vegetarian, or or an omnivore like me, you will be able to get yourself into keto.
Awesome. And so I know that you have mentioned that you are so much more energetic.
Mhm.
So what is it about the keto diet that gives you the energy?
That's, that's a really that's a really excellent question. And so when I started talking about like you know my journey into keto and the 35 pounds, that was like the smallest part of it. Like when I started really researching keto, I found that the keto diet, the ketogenic diet, has been used for thousands of years to control seizures,
Mm,
which is super interesting to me. So like I go to a lot of trade shows, I get involved with a lot of foundations that do a lot of studies on, on the keto diet and how it affects brain function. And so your brain actually requires glucose to function. But a lot of people are like, well, I'll just have some glucose. You only need Your body can absolutely sustain itself on 4 tablespoons of glucose. If you have four
mm,
tablespoons of glucose in your body, you're good. And so what happens is if when your body is depleted, gets down to that 4 grams of of glucose, what happens is your body says, "Hey, we're going to reserve this. We're going to reserve this glucose, and now we're going to start burning fat." Okay, and so the way that you burn fat is that you can eat fat, right? So you can eat the olive oil, you can eat the MCT oil, the avocados, the nuts, and stuff like that. And your miracle organ, right, the liver, your miracle organ takes that fat that you're taking in, and it converts it to ketones. And so your brain actually functions far more efficiently on ketones than it does glucose. And so what I can and anybody who's devoted to a ketogenic lifestyle can tell you is like when you go from burning carbs and burning glucose, and your body shifts to suddenly burning fats through ketones, it's like somebody turned the lights on. You're like, whoa, you're much more aware. Your senses are more aware. You have more energy. You have more stamina. Um, I think your outlook changes. Like you don't get these ups and downs. You have like this steady burn. So it's sort of like when you could think of glucose as rocket fuel, and ketones is like diesel, where it's just steady burn. You don't have that super bunch of energy, but the saying that the candle that burns the brightest burns half as long. So I definitely like to keep an even pace of high energy, and having my body burn fats instead of carbs does that for me.
mm. So how do people actually get started on keto? Is it kind of all in right away?
I would like to say you could dip your toe in, but that's not
You
true.
can't.
You can't, and it can't be a diet. And this is the thing where people get hung up. It's like, well, I don't want to change my lifestyle. Well, then you're not in enough pain. So once your pain of your lifestyle, like if you're carrying extra weight, or if now you've got diabetes and you went to the doctor because your toe hurt, and your doctor says, hey, that's nerve damage from diabetes, and we're going to probably have to take that toe off. I mean, once those things start happening, right, and once you start seeing these massive effects of metabolic disease, like, and also heart disease, like, oh, I can't even go up a flight of stairs without breathing hard, and like all of these various diseases, and even sort of neurodegenerative diseases, like Alzheimer's
Mhm.
and dementia. I mean, they're calling that diabetes type 3 now, because it's a
Wow.
buildup of ash, you know, on the brain that's caused by taking in too much glucose. So, um, so how does one get started? Um, by wanting to make that commitment. And I can tell you, like, I'm not preaching from on high. I When I first started the keto thing, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do 6 days of keto, and the seventh day, I'm not going to rest. I'm going to eat. And I am going to eat like pie, and I'm going to eat ice cream, and I'm going to eat a hamburger, and I'm going to drink a big, large soft drink. And so I used to do that. So I would go all week, And Sunday was my day. It was my cheat day. And when I cheated big. It was bacchanalian. And so what happened is when I tried to get out of bed on Monday, I I felt like crap.
Mm,
And it took me
mm.
another 3 or 4 days to get back into keto. And so finally I was like, look, you can't just dip your toe in. Like if you're going to make a lifestyle change, you know, you have to go all in with it. Meaning, yeah, I'm not going to eat any more French fries. I'm not going to eat, bread that's high glycemic, and you have to change that lifestyle. Um, and I'd also like to add, keto's not for everybody. Okay, so if people are out there that are like, yeah, that sounds way too restrictive for me, try low carb. Try keeping your carbs under 20 grams a day or 30 grams a day, but be mindful of what you're putting into your body. Eliminate sugar is number one. And if you can eliminate sugar, that's your first step. If you can cut your carbs, watch your high glycemic carbs, like breads and pastas and stuff, start cutting back on those. You can ease into that transition that way. But if you're going to go keto, you got to go big or go home.
So when you're doing a keto diet, are you able to eat any kind of desserts?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the master of desserts. Most definitely. Am I able to? Well, so the keto thing is my side hustle, and so my main vocation is I'm the CEO and head food scientist for a sweetener company, and that's what I do all day long. I'm making cookies. I'm making frozen dessert, like ice creams and plant-based frozen desserts. Like I'm continually formulating these things. So there is a lot of frozen desserts. There's a lot of ice creams, cookies, bars, the whole gamut. And some of them are plant-based, some of them are not plant-based, but there's a whole gamut of sweet treats that you can have that will not spike your blood sugar and not take you out of keto.
Mm. So you also make condiments, correct? Keto-friendly condiments?
I do, and that in and of itself is sort of a funny story. So when I adopted the keto lifestyle, it's like, oh, I can't have ketchup, and I can't have barbecue sauce, and I can't have teriyaki sauce. Like three of my favorite things, because teriyaki sauce, ketchup, and barbecue sauce, all of those have more sugar
Sugar.
than ice cream.
Right,
People don't. They're like, what?
right.
And so, yeah, like if you're having a rack of ribs, you could just eat those ribs if you wanted, or barbecue chicken, or whatever the case may be. But once you start adding on the barbecue sauce, that's when you just added 23 grams of sugar, and that meal is no longer keto, no longer low carb. It's sort of a metabolic disaster. So I couldn't have those things. I went down into the lab and I'm like, I mean, I have this lab here. I can create anything I wanted. So I created like 7 or 8 different condiments, like a steak sauce. Cause like, look, if I'm gonna eat steak, I'm not a big red meat eater. So I'll have it occasionally. And when I do, I usually have steak sauce on it to
Mm.
cover up the flavor. So I made a steak sauce that I like to think is the love child of Heinz 57 and A1. Um, and it doesn't have any sugar in it. So I made all of these condiments selfishly for myself. Like I just wanted to be able to eat food like that. And so I was having taste testers and I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? And all of them were like, oh, you should sell these. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a genius. I mean, I work in the food industry. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but I was just making them for myself. And so we released the condiments a couple years ago, and they have been a crazy success.
And what are they called?
Guy Gone Keto. They should have sent you some.
Oh, Myra told me they wouldn't be here until after the podcast.
Oh, well, when they show up, I hope you enjoy them.
Okay, thanks.
And I like people to tell me what I can do better. So if you have them and I'm like, no, I don't think this doesn't taste good. I love hearing that, because that gives me an opportunity to continue tweaking them, because my lab's just 100 feet from me, and I can jump in there and fix anything I break.
So interestingly enough, with keto, I have a lady in my Facebook group, and she suffers with migraines. And the only way that she can control her migraines is on a keto diet. And
Yep.
if she goes away from it any degree, she has migraines again. That was very interesting because I'm a migraine sufferer.
Oh, yeah. I think that you would find great benefits from it. And it just goes back to the whole the how how keto affects you neurologically. There's like, so when you think of this, so your brain actually functions on proteins called peptides, and like peptides fit into receptors like keys, and that's like why you get certain effects from consuming certain things. Might get energy, or it also is sort of pathways for emotions and actions. And so your brain burns these peptides, but it's also using glucose as a source of energy. And so what happens is when you start burning these proteins and you start burning these glucose, what's left behind is like an ash, okay, that needs to get out. It just needs to flush the byproducts of what your brain's been using for energy. And so in order to get what's called a cerebral flush, that happens at night while you're sleeping. You go into REM, and when you're in REM, it just like starts like flushing out through your spinal column, and then ends up passing through your urine and feces. So you're able to get rid of that. If you have too much glucose in your system, your brain will not do that flush, right? It will not flush out those peptides and that plaque that builds up. And so when you look at when you look at like seizures, but more importantly, when you look at like neurodegenerative diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's, I mean, I think dementia is caused by Lewy body plaque, and amyloidal plaque is sort of the deterioration that you find with Alzheimer's. And that plaque actually builds up because your body never properly flushed that plaque and those burned up peptides out of your skull. So that when you shift to just burning ketones, right, your body goes into when you go to sleep, will now, because it doesn't have glucose, because it's burning ketones, will now go into that cerebral flush, and it will relieve that pressure. So when you get a migraine, because occasionally I get them too, and it's usually my left eye, like I'll start just lose vision in my left eye, and it usually means that I've been eating crappy, or I went out and had a couple beers with some friends, and it just threw me completely out of keto.
Right.
But the science behind that, I mean, it's there. Like there's a lot of PhDs that are very involved in metabolic study, and also neurological study. That, I mean, it's conclusive that you have migraines, go on keto. It may not clean them out completely, but it will cut them down radically.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me, for our audience, where can people find you and get more information?
Well, you can find me right here. Here I am. I'm right here. If you just go to Guygon Keto, so you can go to guygonketo.com. Any of the socials at Guygon Keto, LinkedIn, even Guygon Keto. You can get a hold of me and my team. Ask us questions. We're always wanting to be a resource for people. If you want to see sort of the mad science behind, like what we do in the food industry, you can go to iconfoods.com and you can just see what we're up to there. But definitely DM me or reach out to us on social media if you have questions, or if you are looking for resources, to help you through your ketogenic journey. And I mean, we're here to support you.
Yeah, and I will definitely have all those links in the show notes for you.
Awesome.
So I really appreciate you being here with us today. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
You've kind of opened my eyes a little to keto, which is good, because I was, all I've ever thought about is I don't eat meat, so what do I do? So thank you.
You are entirely welcome. And I mean, please feel free to reach out to me at any time and ask me questions as you dip your toe in, if you will.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate
course.
you being here with us.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.